you guys. Thank you for being here with me. I want to talk about the power and importance of our willingness to see an emotion through, to feel a feeling all the way through to the other side. This is something that we are born to do. And if you're like me, at some point along the way, you began to censor yourself. You began to edit. You began to modify your behavior, your willingness to process through those feelings. We are given this gift, this innate capability to really feel our emotions. And the reason, as I see it, is so that it doesn't hang out in our bodies. As the clouds or a storm passing through, it may thunder and it may lightning, or if you're in Southern California, you might get a little dribble. But it exists, and then it passes by. The storms that come through aren't worried about being judged. I know this is a metaphor, right? And maybe the weather feels a little bit different than our emotions, and it is. We're humans having a human experience. But the metaphor is still so powerful, as it does demonstrate this storm, this tantrum that sometimes needs to be had by Mother Earth, by us. We don't question that a child is going to have a tantrum. We may not love it, but we know that it has to happen, right? And so hopefully we comfort that child and we just hold that space. Same thing goes for us. So many of us at an early age began to deny that within ourselves. We decided we needed to be tough. We decided, for whatever our reasons, and for nobody's fault, but just this choice that we made, to censor that. And what I see and what I've noticed within myself is that there was a period of time where I was very easily triggered. I was anxious. I couldn't really just be. When I just was, I felt very uncomfortable. So I would put on my shoes and I would go walk for hours. Get in the car, go to TJ Maxx, go to the grocery store and putter. And there's nothing wrong with any of these things. But I see that it was a way for me to escape what I was feeling. And there's all kinds of ways that we buffer, with food, with alcohol, with weed, with, when I was younger, I read voraciously. Nothing wrong with reading. There's nothing wrong with an occasional beverage or whatever. But for me, again, I noticed that it was my way to check out of what was going on in my body. And so what I want to talk about today are the 4 ways that I actively choose to be with whatever I'm feeling, no matter how uncomfortable. And my brain does want to talk me out of doing this regularly because it's been my MO. But what I've found to be true is that my willingness to be with whatever's present and see it through has actually created more space inside of me to experience joy and to access that joy. And it by no means is like this perfect scenario now, I'm going through menopause right now, and that's, while I'm so grateful to be able to say that my experience has been, all things considered, pretty low key, I'm still noticing some stuff, the hot flashes and night sweats and things like that are coming up sometimes. And even that, I feel like I'm able to receive this and experience this process I feel with a little more grace than I would have if I hadn't been on this path of feeling my emotions. The more I'm gobbling everything up, the more it sits to fester, the more I'm ready to be triggered. And so if you notice that you're feeling anxious and just kind of unsettled, uncomfortable, always needing to be busy, scrolling on your phone, all of the things that I mentioned before and more, there's so many ways that we check out, then stay tuned. I'm hoping that what I share today is going to be of service to you. And as always, take what you like and leave the rest. As I always say, you're the leading authority in your own life. I'm just sharing what's been working for me. So one way that I honor my feelings is really simply to just check in with myself. When we're feeling stuff, discomfort, anxiety, sadness, if we take a moment to just kind of check in, normally we'll feel it somewhere in our body. For me, it's usually in my heart, chest area, and solar plexus. So I'll check in with myself, take a few deep breaths, and place my hands wherever I'm noticing that energy. And rather than resisting, I just feel into what's happening. I acknowledge what I'm feeling, I breathe into what I'm feeling, and I ask myself what I need. And sometimes the message that comes back is I gotta have a really good cry. And so I'll lean into that. And sometimes it doesn't come very easily. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. And so I might watch something, listen to something that I know is just gonna bring that forward. And then when it happens, just like a child, I lean into it and feel it so that it can exist and be and release and then move on by. So checking in with your hands over your heart. This is actually something I do every morning when I wake up. Just checking in. So that's number one. Number two is similar, but it's in the moment healing, in the moment feeling. So for example, before COVID, I used to work out at the clubhouse all the time, and I would spend some time on the elliptical. And in those moments, sometimes I would be watching something or listening to something that would bring up tears. In the past, I would have just, stopped the tears. And what I realized was that it was like this little mini betrayal of myself towards myself each time I pushed that back down. And so I learned to be comfortable with experiencing the feelings as they came up. And so, when I was at the clubhouse, I would just, if I felt the tears coming up, I would just put my hands over my face and have a really good, quick, quiet sob into my hands. And then I would just wipe my tears away and keep going. Worst case scenario, somebody saw. And I just got to a place where I didn't care anymore. It was more important for me to be honest with myself about how I was feeling and to let it come up and out. Number three, I call scream therapy. It sounds kind of funny, but I remember one day my husband and I, we were kind of at each other, and I knew if I said one more thing, it was not gonna be good. And so I just thought, you know what, Katja, we're gonna take this in the car. I was going to work out anyway, and on my way to the gym, I just cut loose in my car. I screamed and I yelled, and I just got that angst out. I recognize that my triggers belong to me. And as much as I want to make someone else the problem, as much as sometimes my brain, my ego wants to talk me into that it's somebody else's fault, they're the ones pissing me off. The truth is that when I just barf that out all over them, it just never seems to serve either of us. And it just seemed to make things worse. And so while perhaps, that other person may be in the wrong somehow or another, whatever that looks like, my trigger is mine. And when I became willing to just work through that on my own, I was showing up not only for myself, but also better able to show up for the people around me. So I really highly recommend that. And I'm going to talk about forgiveness at the end because that really ties into all of this. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Scream therapy, cut loose in your car. It's going to feel weird. And in fact, but what I noticed was that when I was willing to hold the space for myself to feel all the negative feels, it gave way to laughter. And this has been such a beautiful thing to notice. Sometimes the yelling and the screaming that needs to come up and out will turn into laughter. Sometimes it will turn into tears. The last thing I want to talk about is probably the most involved, which is taking your anger, rage, frustration, sadness to a therapy session or a coaching session where you have someone that can hold that space for you to release on a maybe even deeper level what needs to come up and out. So for example, I sat down in my coaching session one day with my amazing coach and I said, my intention is to release anger and rage. I had a foam roller, I had pillows, and I basically vocalized everything that I wasn't able to say, in this case to the bullies. You may have some stuff around your parents, grandparents. All of that is welcome. It's all okay to bring up and out. Say the things that you couldn't say. As my mentor, Veronica Cresto, says, speak the unspeakable. We don't really need to have the exchanges with those who we feel hurt us. What's most important is to just have that space where the feelings and the emotions and all of those pent-up hurts can come up and out. I released it physically, I released it emotionally, I released it verbally. There's so much more I could say about this, but for the purposes of keeping this video fairly short, I'm going to leave it there. If you have any questions about my process, I'm happy to share more. Honestly, each of these processes could each be a video. So anyway, taking it to a coaching session. And then the last piece that I feel for me has been so important and crucial is forgiveness. As I mentioned earlier, so many of us, including myself, and I'm still working through these pieces as they come up, we want to make other people responsible. We don't want to forgive. We don't believe people deserve forgiveness. But what I know for myself is that when I'm holding on to this stuff, I'm the one who suffers. I am the one who is holding on to this toxic energy inside. That other person who wronged me, they may not be suffering. Forgiveness opens up that space of compassion, not only towards myself, but towards others. Those bullies who bullied me probably had other stuff going on and hurt other people. And so I just want to share, for what it's worth, the power that forgiveness has had in my life. It has put me in a more empowered position. So I want to conclude just by sharing with you guys that I believe that our world would be such a different place if we were all willing to accept responsibility for our emotions and we were willing to feel them all the way through. So many of us just in our circle of people that we know, all the way up into, the political scene and everything else that's going on, I just wonder how different our world would be if each and every one of us was willing to prioritize and spend time with ourselves, work through the stuff that's been repressed, and then maintain that, put ourselves on a maintenance program of that willingness to just check in and see what's going on, so that we come from a more centered place, so that we are coming from that place of peace. And it is a maintenance thing. Like, it's not just a one and done. I've processed through a lot of things several times. It takes what it takes. But each time I do, each time I feel whatever's here, each time I feel it all the way through and cry and do whatever, all the things without judgment, I'm more easily able to come back to that centered, peaceful place that exists within for all of us. So before I sign off, I'm going to invite us all to just come into the present moment right now and take a few really deep centering breaths. And just breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And again. Noticing anywhere holding any tension. And relaxing, sending some oxygen that way. And noticing how you feel. Asking yourself, am I okay right now in this moment? Sometimes it's the thoughts that have us feeling like we're not. But as you continue to breathe and come into the moment, noticing how you feel. I know for me, very often it's my thoughts that have me feeling like I'm not okay. But when I just keep coming back to my breath and inviting myself back into my body, I get to see that in this moment, I'm safe. There may be things going on in my life, in the world, that aren't okay, that don't feel good. But I always have this ability to check in, come back into this moment. So I'm going to leave it there for today, and I'm sending you so much love. Got anything out of this video, would love and appreciate if you give it a thumbs up and follow my channel if you feel so inspired. I'll see you in the next video.